think it evolves, and this is the natural progression. So when I started out, kind of 2010, I was 95% in the lab with lab code, doing wet chemistry. And I would say where I find myself today, it's maybe 20% in the lab. The remainder of the time is actually analyzing data, is a fair amount. So I have coworkers who I wouldn't say work for me, but we work together, and they are doing kind of the hands in the lab. And so they would send me the data, we would look at it together, and I'm kind of processing a lot of it. There's also a fair bit of the, I'd say, administrative parts too. So I'm writing the summary reports, giving presentations, writing grants, things like that. So it's almost, I would say, analogous to the same progression that a professor would have in kind of the academic field. Is they start out as an assistant professor, and then they're working alongside their students while the lab gets up and running. And then they get some, they get tenure, then they get some, maybe a higher postdoc or two to help run the lab, give the guidance, have some senior researchers to guide the new ones. And they provide sort of the funds, right? They write the proposals, they make sure everything, equipment gets in. So I think it's somewhat analogous. The advantage that I see in the situation I'm in is it's sort of by choice. So if I chose that I wanted to go back to the lab, I could do that. And so now it's sort of by choice that I feel like we're making maximum impact by having a team doing kind of day-to-day, and I'm sort of doing the ideas or facilitating. But I think the ability to go back is open to me if I get bored of this or tired of writing reports or something like that. So yeah, thanks for the question.
How are you relied on or considered an expert? Not in the United States, but I sense that you must have some global influence, and what do they call you for?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So I can give one example, probably. So within this community, so radiation detection is a fairly niche area, so I'm cognizant of that, but it's a high consequence area. So one example is, I mentioned the IAEA, so it's the regulatory agency in charge of ensuring that no country is wrongly enriching their nuclear fuel to produce weapons. So we've been contacted, for example, by IAEA, which is based in Europe, so France and Switzerland. They have headquarters there. And they would say, okay, we need an improved detector that has this much better performance than the existing thing. And we can't tell you why, but this is what we need. So they would come to us and say, we need a material with these characteristics, and can you do that? So it's that type of question. So they would say, we have a technical problem, we need this. What are some of your ideas to answer that? And so far, I think what's been self-sustaining is past performance is somewhat a measure of your future success with these people. So we've been able to deliver some solutions that they're able to implement, at least in their testing labs, and are now kind of on the cusp of getting into their actual fielded systems. So that's one area. Another one, unfortunately, it's sort of tight-lipped because there's some classification things, but it has to do with that engineering project I mentioned where they said, okay, we need intelligence, US intelligence or some has indicated that there is this very credible threat, and this is the threat in this location. So we need this. And they tell you, okay, these are the requirements that we need, and this is the timeline, has to be released to the military on this date. Can you do it? And it's that type of question, and I think only by demonstrating, kind of doing the easy stuff, and delivering on that, will they go to you and ask for sort of the high consequence things. And so I think those are the types of questions we get. We don't necessarily get all the info, but they say, this is what we need, this is kind of the general problem, and this is when we need it. And it's mainly driven by trust. So they see, talk to the managers at the lab, or directly to us, as the staff members, and then they funnel it out.
So when you develop technologies for either some government type agency or the US government, are you patenting those technologies, and then if you commercialize, are you selling those patents to these governments and government agencies?
So typically, if we're doing it on that context, it's not, because in general, if it's sort of limited production, let's say, and if there's classification with it, we're not worried about it getting kind of taken away, right, or somebody's taking advantage of it, let's say Chinese government, because it stays kind of under that secure pathway the whole time. But if there's a consumer application, then we're very careful to patent it, and then the main goal there is not to make money. So the labs really don't care about making money, I wouldn't say. It's more about how do we incentivize the company to do production in the quantities that we're going to protect them and give them profit. And then we get sort of the small amount of kickback of the royalties and things like that. So it kind of depends on the market. So one example being these glasses, there's a dual use. One is for organic electronics. So if OLEDs, right? You see on these TV screens or on phones, OLEDs are driven a lot by organic technologies. And so a problem with some of the existing materials in those layers for the OLED emitter is that they tend to crystallize. And so that leads to either device failure or there's breakdown. So the brightness goes down, or the pixel stops working, for example. So what we find is that by keeping the material glassy or amorphous, it applies directly to those technologies as well. So we were very careful to patent that, because we could say, okay, we set a claim for this core technology, and so if it's utilized, then we keep our stake in the field that way. So it really depends on the application space.
In a little bit later, maybe you talked about it. For people who do research, you decided to go to industry instead of staying in academia. What is your thinking about it? It's like more difficult with research over there, like
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So I decided pretty early on that I wasn't very motivated, or I wasn't cut out personally for academia. I think part of it was there's a pretty long sort of lag time before you have some sense of stability in your life. So in other words, the tenure process, it's somewhat uncertain, particularly if you go for the best university that you can be a professor at, right? Then the standards are pretty tough. And so I saw some really talented professors not get tenure, and for a variety of reasons, but I didn't want to subject my family to that, I guess, in a way. So that was a big factor. The second thing that I think that I thought was a big difference, turned out I was a little bit wrong, but I thought that going into the national lab system, I would be a little bit less dependent on writing my own grants. And I'll hedge that by saying you can fully succeed in the national lab by never writing a grant. And when I say succeed, you mean you can coexist. So you can collect a paycheck, you do okay. But to me, I didn't want to just be at the baseline, right? So at the end of the day, it was really a personal decision, I think, just with the stability part early on, because just getting some sense of, okay, my family life situated, I don't want to have to move if the unforeseen happens for tenure process. What I do like about the lab that is a little bit less prevalent in academia is we do a lot more diverse work. So that has been a major difference to me. So most professors that I've collaborated with or that I've interacted with are really known for one specialty, or at least the really successful ones, they they drive deep and they're an expert in this one thing. And I think the lab gives you more breadth to, you can choose, right? You can do 5-year, 10-year snippets of careers, mini careers. And if you want to change something or learn something new, you have this wide open kind of textbook, provided it's within the scope of the lab's mission. So I thought that was refreshing. Sess, any follow-up to that? Or okay, thank you. Okay. All right, well, thank you again for the opportunity to come out. I know you guys, it's what is it, Monday afternoon, getting ready to get dinner, so.
It's a short week. They're going to
Yeah.
have a nice dinner in a
That's true.
couple of
Yes, I almost
days.
forgot it's Thanksgiving, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
But thank you, Patrick. It's been
Sure.
really good to have you visit. And I think it's really valuable, especially to our younger students today, to know that hardly anyone knows where I am today and where I'll be and exactly if it's a straight line, because it rarely ever is. And you give such good examples about decisions, making decisions for right reasons. I really love the heart part of, I'm doing this for family, I'm doing this for my own joy, I'm doing, I think those are really important things to hear, because so quickly we chase the dollar or we chase other measures of success. So thank you for being with us.
Oh, sure, of course, thank you.
And giving a Thanksgiving boost.
All right,
Are you available just a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah,
I'm
I'll stick
sure
around.
people
I can
have
stick around.
personal questions,
Yeah.
private questions
Fire
to
away,
ask.
so.
Yeah, go ahead. How about you?
Yes, thank you.
So
So I grew up here. Oh, so it's the Bay Area? It's California? Yeah, so it's, yeah, my parents still live here, so we're doing a family Thanksgiving vacation. So, yeah, so I think I didn't get a chance to introduce you. So your name is?
Andres,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I like a lot